Hi, welcome back to Wild Speculations. I'm Daniel.
I'm Scott.
This week we talk about Critical Role Campaign 2, Episode 129, Between a Ball and a Hot Place.
Yes.
One of the better episode titles in a while.
Yeah.
I saw it, I was like, oh, that's so good. And I was very gratified that Matt says, and we begin with the Happy Fun Ball team.
Yep.
I was like, yes.
The cast wasn't too excited, but I mean, it just made sense.
Yeah.
To do it that way with the time dilation.
Yeah.
So they get into the entry room,
Which I had forgotten about.
because they only entered it once of the 2 times they went in. They used a different combination. It depends on the combination you use where you go in, enter at.
Mm. That's true. Yeah. We have the Thieves Tool trap.
Yep.
Discussion and exploration, as it were. And what about your ring? Juster has it! The one time!
One time it would be useful.
Travis was a gem this episode. Start to finish, really. Bo fails, then fails again, then fails again. And they get blasted twice.
Yep.
And Ford says, I have a dagger and pitons. Well, he says pythons, but it's pronounced pitons. Yeah, those are not very good lockpicks.
No. Pitons are good for securing a door in a dungeon when you want to sleep.
Yes.
Hammer a few pitons in the door jamb so that the door doesn't open and make your camp for the night.
Yeah.
That's probably the most common use I've found for them in a game of D&D.
I usually use them for their intended purpose, which is for climbing high things. But yes, as an alternate use, that is a good one. Did we get a look, or a hint for Ashley's Campaign 3 character? When she's like, inspiration.
Maybe, but I think you're reading into it.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, it's as much of a hint as near the end of Campaign 1 when Lori kept singing and everyone thought she was going to play a bard.
This first part of the episode proved my axiom of you have to be 10% smarter or 30% stronger to use an object, to use a device. They were not smart enough to get past it, so they had to rely on strength. And I loved Travis's, when Matt's like, so what's the plan? Who says there's a plan?
At least he's honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find the idea that this artifact has existed for almost 1,000 years.
Yep.
And Yasha's first time at the front door, she breaks it.
Yep, just cross off that connection between the study and that room.
So good, though. And then they get to the study. And this is a perfect example of how DMs always get a bad rap. for trying to kill their players.
Okay.
All Matt said was almost all the books are gone, except 3.
Yeah.
Which was the condition when they went in to save Yusa.
Mm-hmm.
And Caleb and Knott both looked at those books and decided it wasn't worth the risk,
right,
to tamper with them. Now, I guarantee you Travis did not remember that.
Yeah. Marisha would have remembered it if she had her notes from then.
I don't know about
or
that.
Or if she took notes from then.
Yeah. But they decide to mess with the books. And it opens up, releases a golem, which comes after them.
Yeah.
And Matt was being very kind this episode.
Yeah.
And it started with this golem chasing them. Because really what Ford did would have taken 4 turns, maybe 5. Because you've got to run the 60 feet, got to come back, and then run again, and then come back, and then go.
Yeah.
And if memory serves, the first time when they were with Twiggy, it took them 3 turns to power that. And there was multiple people shooting coal down there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The fact that he let him cast both spells and almost get to the intersection again before the golem came down was very nice. Especially because he narrated it busting down the bookcase. Yeah, it's just... So, the book that had the words on it,
mm-hmm.
none of them could read it.
Correct.
And Matt described it as...
an ancient Elvish or Sylvan.
Elvish text.
Well, he said or Sylvan.
Yeah. Do you think it's
for the
Sylvan?
script? The script is from that character.
Yeah.
I don't. If it is, it's in like an obscure dialect thereof.
Because I have no basis for this.
Okay.
But my mind went to Sengor. Because it's a planar traveling city. It was around back then.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I don't know.
Like I say, I have no basis for it.
Yeah, it's one of the languages which uses Elven as the base script, and an ancient one.
Yeah.
I think the 19 she got with her background and everything,
she should have been able to identify it.
If it was just Sylvan.
I don't know. Because it's a rare language, I probably would put the DC at 20.
Okay.
If it was a corporeal, normal language, definitely she should have identified it.
Mm-hmm. And then the other side of that is she can't really. She's just identifying the script, and there's, like 5 scripts that dozens of languages use each one of, so she can identify the script. The script would be Elven. It's
fair.
But as far as the language that's using the Elven Sylvan script, she doesn't really have the ability to, you know what I mean?
Yeah. got a peek at some high-level D&D frustration from Matt. Because he sort of designed this ball, at least the challenges that they're going through, back when they were between 5th and 8th.
I was going to say like 7th, 8th, I think.
Yeah. So a 30-foot drop is nothing anymore.
Especially for Bo.
Yeah. And again, he was not trying to punish them because, in theory, she could have negated the fall damage, but because she rolled that natural 1, he could have said you are prone.
Yeah.
And you would have to use half your movement. But he wasn't keeping that granular attention to detail for them. And I let, yeah, because it's dope munch shit. And he had the discussion, because I don't really think it was a disagreement, with Travis.
Right.
When he's like, I can cast first level spells.
Well, I think the thing is, Armor of Agathis is a warlock spell, which is what he was casting. And Matt forgot about the paladin, and he's just like, he's mainly a warlock most of his life. He's just like, no, and he's thinking, okay, it's a warlock spell. You cast it at the highest, all your spells at the highest level. He's like, no, I've got 3. He's like, oh, that's right, the paladin. He had forgotten about the paladin spells.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And one of the things that I kind of laughed at, it's neither here nor there probably, but Liam, when we cut over to them in the plane of fire, he's like, I got 4 more eyes.
Yes.
So he was also potentially expecting the imbalance in eyes.
He was wondering about that as well.
And I think the time dilation is times 8. Because I think Matt used...
It's got to be longer than that. Strictly because they took a long rest and the people didn't come back till after the long rest.
That's fair.
Plus they did all the stuff before that.
That's fair. That's true. I forgot about that.
Might be times 9 times 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, they pop up. Are we done with the Happy Fun Ball?
I think so. I don't think anything.
No, yeah, that was
other than the funny stuff in the beginning of them. Come in the Happy Fun Ball. I need your arcane mind.
Yeah.
Bits. Not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rose, and I'm almost positive. I didn't pull the book out to double check, but I'm almost positive the text of Stunning Strike specifies living creature.
Yeah.
But yes, that is another area where Matt was very kind.
Yeah. And I would have to check to see if they were, but I even made note to you earlier that Bo, when she gets ready to attack, she's reading her notes. Constructs are immune to stunning, and then she attacks it and does Stunning Strike.
Yeah. I didn't catch that. But yeah.
But regardless, we get out, and so I was looking at Plane Shift, the spell, and it's a random location, and it says, unless you know the sigils to a teleportation circle on that plane. Now, I'm wondering, would there be a way, a workaround around that with the scroll or the etchings on the tuning fork being tied to that teleportation circle? Because they do end up basically in Plane Rider Rin's sanctum. So it seemed like a specific, not a random.
Yeah.
So
I got it because I took it that because you can name a place on plane shift, that it was named within the text
of the scroll.
of the scroll.
Yeah.
That was my read of it.
Yeah, I wanted to get your read. That was pretty much mine as well. That plane rider Rin, who we find out was, the author of the book, who is one of the Arcana Pens philosophical. He's one of the named people. He's the planar travel expert of the group. Go figure. And he's a tiefling, which is why his journal is infernal, which is why Jester can read it.
Yeah.
But we get to his place, and we get the NPC's reactions.
Yeah.
Luke is amazed. Yessa is terrified. And Marion is cautious.
And nervous.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Jesters, we're just at someone's house, Mom. I'm like,
So is Goldilocks.
Yeah. Yeah. My big thing for that part of the episode was Jester's reading of the book.
Yeah.
I did like the way Matt handled that situation, which was basically, you're doing this, we'll get back to you.
Yeah.
To reinforce the fact that time is going to pass and you will be unavailable for the shenanigans of the group. And Laura took that in later when Taliesin was like, do you want to hit her with Blessing of the Trickster, is what he was trying to get at. And she's like, I'm busy.
Yeah.
So I thought that was
and
really
I like that she's like, I only understand this. I probably ain't. Oh, no, you actually understand everything in it. Wait, what? We'll get back to that. Kind of a mini cliffhanger for Laura.
Yeah. Yeah. But the big thing was his describing of the months-long cycle of an ebb and flow of magic and planar barriers.
Yeah.
Thinning, strengthening, and that he suspects that a great change, a great event is on the horizon.
Yes. What is the conjunction?
Yes. And my first thoughts were he did not make this connection. I did. But it is connected to Ruidus.
Yeah.
Because Ruidus takes several orbits of Katha to make an orbit.
Yeah.
Which would be several months process.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's probably the Chained Oblivion. But if we're also right, and the Tarrasque is connected to the Chained Oblivion, that the Tarrasque, this is the first real hint that something of that level is coming.
And see, I got hung up on it's the end of everything or the beginning
of something new. Yeah.
My brain just went to the Dark Crystal when he meets Agra and he's all, what's the great conversion? It's the end of the world or the beginning. I'm like, she found Agra's notebook.
Yeah.
Dark Crystal is part of the Exandria canon.
Veth goes down the twisty hall. No Toughnir. Tarrasque is this campaign's.
Yeah.
If we're right.
What we've been saying from our first episode.
Yeah.
And you and I even before that.
Yeah.
Just
because Matt, last campaign, chose Vecna because he's always wanted to use Vecna. And in various interviews during campaign 1, he mentioned how he loves the Tarrasque.
Yeah, and those are the two most popular, I guess, or most desired to use as a
other
DM.
than Tiamat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are up there as the...
Yeah. If there's a top 5, it's Vecna, the Tarask,
Tiamat,
Strahd, Tiamat, and like the Illithid in general.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and our theory was that the Tarask was going to be basically... The Chain of Oblivion is basically statted as the Tarask.
Or the Tarask is his corporeal child, the way that
Uk'otoa
Uk'otoa
is Ahir's.
Yeah. Which I kind of wish we had some inkling whether or not Lucian went to the ocean and just dumped that in the ocean.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how we would, but I do wish that we had some kind of indication. Perhaps something about the giants that are cutting off trade. Might be the way that information gets to them. But Veth decides to go down the tunnel. And as she did that, I was like, the immediate vicinity is safe. Don't go looking for trouble.
Would they be the Mighty Nine if they did that?
No. Veth is, well, I guess it's a combination. The role switches between Ford, Bo, and Veth as to who gets to play Pip in the episode.
Yes.
You've always got to look. Yeah. So she goes out, sees the end of the tunnel, and decides, if I'm going to go all the way to the light, maybe I should have backup.
Yeah. So let me go back and get the one that's out of spell slots.
Yeah. Well, and the only other one that can sneak, because Caduceus isn't much for skullduggery, and Caleb was busy.
Yeah.
So the options are limited. Like if Bo had been there, she probably would have taken Bo. But they go out there, confirm it is the fire plane that we are on. It's not hell. And they commit the cardinal sin of every person in any movie where they're in a dangerous situation. They start talking about what's going to happen after the war.
Yeah, they just get excited. They start talking, and I think it's ironic that they're talking about how great detectives they are. And I'm like, yeah, they're detectives in the vein of the Venture Brothers.
It's a little unfair, but also kind of accurate.
But yeah, they alert. What was that? I mean, it was an elemental of some kind, but the description, the way it sat, was very reminiscent of the hag above the house, and
a little bit. I think
with the extended arms and the...
I think it's statted out in Warning Guidance. Because I think I remember seeing that, because it's one of the elementals there in that book, I think. Because it's not in the monster manual.
Right.
And it's not in Volos. So yeah, I think it's in Warden Kindness. And it's just a multi-step enemy, basically. Yeah. Rose, yeah, I have a feeling Veth's other ideas have to do with her and Yeza. Basically building an apothecary business, or going into business with Puma and becoming a supplier for Puma.
Yeah, and I really think that, especially considering the talk she has with Yeza later, that, and again, I know I said this before and was wrong, but that she's, at the end, she's done adventuring. She's ready to settle down.
Yeah. And I think that's why I think Yeza is a key component of any potential after adventuring, because she has missed so much of Luke's life.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's envious of Yeza's relationship right now, the access that he has. And I think she wants that. So if it's not just we become reclusive rich people off all the gold that I have,
yeah,
and live 15 years or so just off the profits of my adventuring, I think it's going to be largely we'll do work with Puma and make money that way.
Yeah.
And that way Yeza's involved. She can be involved too, because that's one of the things that she's said many times that she liked doing was helping Yeza.
Yeah.
So it's the real question in the denouement of this campaign will be, does she encourage Luke towards adventuring? But that's we'll have to see, because the denouement may not go that long.
Yeah, I think she at least encourages him to study magic. But I don't know about adventuring.
Interesting. I love the callback to Spurt too. Yes. I feel like there was a small guy who got squashed. There's so much of that of leading up to that to get the elemental. And this is one that Matt was kind of mean about, but also kind of nice. Okay. He was mean in that he didn't give them an opportunity attack. Neither one of them had weapons drawn, so they only could really have slapped her. Right. Which for both of them is not going to be very much damage. Jester's only going to be 4 damage, and Veth 1, I think. Yeah. So, in that regard, it was kind of mean. But in the way that he was nice, is he didn't charge them the turns of movement that realistically should have been charged. Yeah. Because the tunnel was over 200 feet. The elemental with a move and a dash is 100, so it's making it 2 turns. Yeah. Veth is going to be, by my count, Veth was 50 feet behind it when it got to Caleb. Okay. So still a move and a bonus action dash from engaging, from being in the room. But just a move to shoot at it. Yeah. But Jester would have only gotten 120. So she would have had another 2.5 turns of running, of being out of the fight. But I also had to, when she was like, does it have advantage? And she's looking at it. And I just flashed back to Liam, last episode. Read your spells, kids. Yeah. And Matt's like, oh, no, it does have advantage. And I'm worried that Jester's turn away from Bloodlust, because she used to be one of the stone cold killers of the group, where the last few encounters we've seen, she hasn't been.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering about that, and if we will touch on that.
Yeah.
Because both with the guards and with this fire elemental, she tried to do the non-violent.
Yeah, and I got really excited when she pulled out the axe.
Yeah, me too.
I was like, she's gonna use the divine strikes, 2d8 poison,
which means nothing to a fire elemental.
True, but the fact that she was gonna try it excited me.
Yes.
And yeah,
and I was yelling at the TV, "Toll the dead." Her and Caduceus both have it, unless they use the rules in Tasha's and at 8th level or 12th level switched out their cantrips.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, "Toll the dead!" Because 3d12 is way better than 3d8. But yeah. Caduceus is MVP
of the battle, yes.
Well, even before the battle, really, to me, he was MVP because it was his idea that set this up. True, that was last week.
Yeah.
But he was also the only other one interacting with Luke, or the NPCs, really.
Yeah, I can see that.
Caleb goes down. There was some discussion from Liam where we pointed out that he has the transmuter stone.
Mm-hmm.
And he could bring somebody back. Yeah, Rose, Luke and Cad. That's one of the reasons why I like his death had a little more weight. Like it was always going to have weight from that. And I think Jester was in that moment just thinking that could be my mom.
Yeah.
It was almost my mom. So I think that's where her difficulty was. And chancing jumping in the lava. And I was like, it can't be a high-level critical roll without somebody jumping in lava.
Putting their foot in lava, yeah.
Because they all like to think about Vax, and they all seem to forget Keelan. That she and Thordak's layer ended up in the lava.
Well, I think because there was so much time spent on Vax's foot healing.
True. And Jester did kind of roleplay missing some toes, even though Matt didn't enforce that injury. But they get their long rest. And there's a discussion both between Veth and Yeza as they go to sleep. And like Yeza feels all this is his fault. Veth thinks all of this is her fault. And Marion sort of comes down, evil people are going to make good people think it's their fault when it's not.
Yeah, well, that she's talking to Jester and Caleb in that, but it relates too.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing I wanted to touch on was helping him with the collar. And don't blame yourself. I know you're prone to do that. And that was a really good moment between those two characters.
Yeah. And the widow just love reignited on the socials. So again, it's probably never going to happen. But
yeah, I didn't get a widow just vibe from it, but for me, the vibe in that was more back when there was tension among the fandom over whether Keyleth was going to going to go for Percy or Vax, and then after they made it clear, no, we're like brother and sister. It was more that vibe to me between Jester and Caleb.
Sure.
So that was the vibe I got from it.
Jester casts sending, and we get the time dilation of the sending, and she begins to worry. Why do you think Caduceus wasn't the one to cast Plane Shift? In theory, he's the one with the tuning fork. That's why I ask.
Yeah. No, I think the reason Caduceus didn't do it is because they were mixing up editions. Liam was mixing up editions. Because now, if a spell is on a scroll, and that spell is on your spell list, you can use that scroll. Before, if it was a wizard scroll, Plane Shift, you had to be a wizard to cast it, even if you had Plane Shift from another class in 3rd edition.
But they weren't using the scroll.
Oh, to go back.
To go back.
I thought you were talking about going there.
No, going on the return trip.
That I don't know.
I thought it weird that Caleb put it on Jester. You're casting it. I mean, either cleric can cast it.
Right.
But it was I kind of wish I knew why Taliesin didn't step up, even though he's the one that has the tuning fork.
Right.
And paid for it. But yeah. And there's the discussion about the Slurpee out the window with them popping out of the Happy Fun Ball in mid-transit between the planes.
Well, then they can rescue Yusa because he'll be on the astral plane.
I think that would be the destination for anything lost.
That's what I would rule it, because the astral plane's supposed to be what's in between all the planes.
Yep. But they get to
Nicodron.
No.
Zadash.
Just a couple blocks from the
Leaky Nip.
evening nip.
I'm going with Justin.
I almost said it, but I stopped myself and to use the correct one. But yeah, and again, being with Marion, they all basically start walking out the alleyway, leaving her behind. After Luke, I died!
Yes.
Which is, of course, how a kid would say.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But she has Ford. Take care of Mama. I'm going to message Papa. Because she hasn't actually done that yet.
Yeah.
Sets up the parent trap, as it were. Warns him that they're coming.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, because I think he probably... Based on his response to her sending, he probably would have lost his shit.
Based on every other time they've gone there, it would have ruined the Parent Trap, because every time they've gone there, he's been in bed with another woman.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
Yeah, but we get there, everyone's frantically cleaning.
Ooh, tough name. That's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that. Gesture modifying Luke's memory to make him forget dying.
Yeah.
Huh. That starts her down a slippery slope, though. Because if she does that for Luke to take away his trauma,
Does she do it for Yeza
or Caleb?
Caleb? Yeah.
Which brings up the possibility also, which we've touched on in the past, but I was thinking about it again today. What if his memory of killing his parents is modified?
Well,
and they're still alive?
And that's where my question is, because modified memory has another use, and that is to restore clearly an actual memory. And why hasn't she done that for the time that Caleb lost? Why hasn't he done it for the time Yasha lost? Why hasn't she done that for Ford, so that he can get a clearer recollection of what happened on the ship?
Well,
because
as we discussed, she doesn't read her spells, kids.
You know, all these things that could potentially resolve issues, potentially get them to where they need to go. You know, Caleb, remembering the woman, exactly what happened. Even back when they were getting not to Beth, and she was confused and had that lost time when she was she had it because she used it on the hag. Why didn't she use it on Not to clear up that memory so they would know what to do? Yeah, she stopped at that first paragraph and didn't read the second one.
Yeah. I think my favorite summation of their day was Travis. When he's like, yeah, we're just going to break in and steal this thing. Ah! Ah! It's like, yeah, that's accurate. And the episode ends with the gentleman turning around.
Hello. Yeah, so
we got a lot of time for speculations now.
Well, let's start out with the speculation that I asked you. We can ask everybody in the audience. How futile were the last 3 episodes when Sprinkle is a living creature and is therefore a legal target for scrying?
I question whether or not Sprinkle is a living creature. Especially with the death of Luke, I think Matt can pull that Band-Aid off, and Sprinkle didn't make it out of the fire plane, guys. Sorry.
She's just sitting there with a roasted weasel around her neck.
Or the fan theories are more true, and he is undead. Yes. Yes. Sprinkle is a god, because Luke died before him, yes. But I think it's...
See, now they can modify memory on Luke to make him clearly remember, and then in the afterlife, he saw Sprinkle, and Sprinkle sent him back.
I mean, in some ways, you make a good point. And I had never thought about an animal as a target for scrying, because that makes finding a ranger a lot easier too.
Yeah.
Um,
The only question would be is if they're all attuned and they scry on Sprinkle, they don't see the others because they're all blocked from it. They just see Sprinkle, so they get an idea of where they are. Would they be able to hear them if they're talking?
well, here's the thing.
With clairaudient.
The necklace hides you and your possessions. And the way Matt has thus far been running with Sprinkle is that Sprinkle is a possession.
Just an item in the inventory.
Yeah. That's why when they've teleported,
as he counted it as you and 8 other creatures.
Yeah.
Fair.
Although it will be funny if Bo or Ford realizes, wait, did you send 3 of us in the Happy Fun Ball so the weasel could come? So that the weasel could come?
Yes.
But if Sprinkle is a valid target for scrying, I think he just sees Sprinkle floating.
Yeah. And it's dark. It's dark because Sprinkle's just inside the hood.
Or, yeah, dark.
Yeah, I mean, really, depending on how close in they get.
And Matt already has altered the way scrying operates on the show.
Yeah.
Versus what it says in the book. Because what it says in the book is you have a seeing sensor that you see quite clearly the area around you.
Mm-hmm.
Where Matt tends to make it a little tighter. And I don't think scrying says you hear anything. I think it's just vision. So, to answer your previous question about could he hear them, no.
Yeah.
It's a good point off Nader. The access to uses amplification.
Yeah. Which we discussed last week with the unfettered access through the teleportation circle.
Again, I think there's just too much wrapped up in diplomatic relations in abusing Yusa and his tower, that it's easier to
at the very least, we know that Trent's familiar and has access to residuum.
Yeah.
And tripods, and is at least on level, if not above, Yusa. He could merely take notes and create his own amplification chamber.
That's also true.
So,
if Trent is even there, because Trent might not be there.
Well, in the recap, this episode, the recap from previous episodes, Matt specifically says Trent made his way to the tower. He specifically pointed out that Trent was the one that was there pounding on the door. So Trent was definitely there.
Okay. Now that they have I guess the big question is, what do you think the probability is that they teleport to the north? this week. Because I could see the Parent Trap and the reuniting of Marion and the gentleman spinning out a Bo and Yasha scene, a Ford and Jester scene, a Jester and Caleb scene,
a Beth and Yes's scene.
Yeah.
So I think my gut says that if they do, it's the end of the episode, and we pick up the following episode in the north.
Okay.
I think we have the Parent Trap. I think we have the spin out scenes. I think regardless of how the Parent Trap goes, we have a Bo and Yasha scene.
Yeah.
Follow up, from the date night. I think since they're there, they're going to go and check in with Puma.
I think Veth had something ordered from him.
Even more reason to go.
I think somebody ordered something from him and they couldn't pick it up.
So, I think best case scenario for the North is that all that happens very concisely and quickly, which is unusual for the cast, and they leave at the break and the second half is there. But more likely, I think it's the whole episode and they leave at the end of the episode.
Yeah. Adrian, yeah, I think they had a death.
The flask. The new flask.
Yes, it was Veth's flask. Yes, with the Chardonnay. Yes, thank you. I think, like, those scenes are inevitable in my mind. I think this is going to be a check-in episode. I think it's going to be 3 to 8 minutes per pair-off that happens.
Okay.
Minimum. And I think we're going to get all of the 9 when they discuss what we're going to do next. They're not going north. They're going to the Grove. Which does run the clock out more.
Well, if they're only doing 3 to 8 minutes, they can do all of that pre-break, go to the Grove post-break, and still
hit the north at the end. Yeah, that's the other thing, Toffinator, is Matt did try his best to inform them the trip to the Grove is not needed.
Yeah.
But I think this episode proves very well that Matt can put all the hints that he wants. That they should or should not do certain things, and they're going to do the opposite. Because I thought it was fairly evident that they not touch the books.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it fairly evident that they don't leave the cave.
Yeah.
At least wait until the dome is up. Because that would have changed the whole equation as well. Because the fire elemental couldn't have gotten through.
Yeah.
Now that just means they have a fire elemental waiting at their doorstep for it to drop. And they have a different problem. But that might have hastened the plane shift.
Yeah.
To Zadash. Rather than waiting an extra hour.
Yeah.
After. Which is also a funny moment. I'll just make the dome again. Well, why don't we just go home? Oh yeah, we can do that. Do you think... because they didn't take the notebook. They didn't take the book.
The Rin's book?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. Caleb had it.
No, Caleb specifically said he didn't want to take it.
Oh, okay.
So unless Jester decided to take it for him, they left it there. I worry that Rexingtrim, the Empire, is not the place to be hiding the family members. Because it's Trent's backyard.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the 9 will be upfront with the gentleman about who is after them. And I suspect he will ask pointedly, unless he is totally taken aback by Mirian's appearance, that it doesn't matter why they need to be here. Of course they can stay. I'm kind of worried that it gets out. Because even if the gentleman doesn't tell.
Someone in... Yeah.
Yeah. Nick, yeah. I don't think we will see anything with Ford. It's certainly not until they are done with the North.
And unless they go to the storm giants that are blocking the sea trade while they're there.
Yeah, I mean, personally, what I would like to see them do, which is probably never going to happen because I don't think they remember they have the favor, but the Silver Silt Court.
Yeah.
And the Mirror that owes them essentially a wish.
Yeah, and that's my biggest thing that I want them to.
Yeah. And maybe that's how Ford gets out from under Uk'otoa, or how they reseal Uk'otoa.
Cobalt Soul Trial.
That's another 6 weeks out. Top in air. Yeah, the feeling that the story is coming to an end is definitely worrisome for my Tarask theories.
Yeah.
But they haven't really resolved Uk'otoa. They haven't resolved the Blooming Grove. Because something else needs to be done. Because Dad said it's basically back to the way it was before we all started leaving. Like, the encroachment is stopped, but the land isn't healed.
Yeah.
So we haven't addressed that. We haven't found out what's going on in the Ashkeeper Peaks. Which, if we're right about the Tarask, that's going to be where it's coming out.
Yeah.
Let's see. Bo's story is about to get wrapped up, I think, for her backstory. And it's a matter of, will Bo and Caleb take on leadership roles?
Yeah.
And Bo, the answer seems to be kinda. In the sense that Martin Riggs was technically a senior detective.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Chief seems more comfortable in the second in command role.
Yeah.
Than she's the first officer, not the captain.
Yeah. Veth's story is pretty close to being wrapped up. So yeah, it's really the Empire. Can they save the Empire? Can they stop the city? And will Ruidus crack and bring about a second calamity, which would be a great setup for campaign 3.
Yeah.
But that's all the time we have for this week, guys. We're gonna go and enjoy Talks, which is
Matt and Taliesin.
Yep. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.